Grid Kids.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Grid Kids. I'm your host as always, Nicholas Semrad, and I want to start off by telling all of you how much I appreciate your words of encouragement so far. There have been too many messages and emails to reference specifically, but I just want to let you know that they really do mean a lot, and they are definitely encouraging me to continue to improve this podcast in every way possible. This episode was actually supposed to come out during the middle of last week, but an unplanned few gigs in Jakarta with Donnie McCaslin's group and a severe bout of some sort of crazy food poisoning led me to pushing back its release a few days. Therefore, one or two of the upcoming events that we speak of in this episode have already happened, but other than that tidbit, I'm sure you'll enjoy this conversation quite a bit. This episode features one of my good friends and absolute favorite singer-songwriters, Miss Jennah Bell. I met Jennah through some mutual friends up in New York and have been lucky enough to get to accompany her on a number of shows now. As you'll soon hear, she is one of the most poetic and insightful speakers and songwriters around, and has some extremely nuanced and educated opinions on not only social issues, but the music business as well. Her new record entitled Anchors and Elephants came out just a week and a half ago, and I've had it on constant repeat since its release. It's a really extremely beautiful piece of art. Here's a short clip from one of my favorites from that record entitled Candied Daylight.
Rid me of my blues, bring me chocolate in the morning. No day begins too sweetly after dancing in the air. Just wipe me from the corners of the mouth you spoke me out of. Sweet things in the morning. Tender are the days and wishes on a cake turkey. Shut my eyes in the spring. All jellyfish and legs, all peanut butter bread. Still wondering what days go.
And now, here's my interview with Miss Jennah Bell. Hey everybody, I am here with Jennah Bell. Hello,
What's
Jennah Bell.
up?
Are you? We just played. She just released her new record called Anchors and Elephants
Indeed.
yesterday,
Yeah.
and I was lucky enough to have been blessed with the keyboard role for the evening, and I had a blast. Did you have a blast?
I had a great time.
Yes, it seemed like a really good crowd who was full of people who actually care, which is always the win for shows like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you can really ask for, huh?
Yeah. And yeah, so that has been released, and you did a big tour with Emily King,
I
who's
did.
fucking fabulous, and I'm
The
sure
best.
she's a sweetheart.
Oh, the sweetest.
I saw an Instagram video of you and her singing one of your songs.
Yeah.
I think I may have freaked out a little bit when I heard it, as I'm sure
You
did.
freaked out. I freaked out.
That was just like backstage after a show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just one of those things. You know, you don't want to be like one of those movies where people are like, "Oh, is that really how it really happens? You guys just like go in the bathroom and you're just jamming."
I don't know, those are all my favorite movies. So
I
can't
mean,
hate
yes. What I'm really saying is, I love those movies, and I reenacted one.
them. Yeah, usually Heath Ledger's somewhat involved in one of those.
Yes. Oh,
Poor guy.
amazing actor.
So yeah, you got off that huge tour. It has been doing well for you. The record came out. You worked with everyone I love on it.
Oh,
All my favorite musicians, including
all of mine too.
Mr. Antoine Katz, who's pretty decent at bass.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, and my favorite piano player, probably of all time, Jake Sherman, of whom I'm wearing
What a
his
guy.
face on my shirt today. If any of you haven't checked out Jake Sherman, I'm sure you all have because I blab about him every 5 minutes. But, I don't think he's ever played a wrong note, A. And B, I think there's something magical about his spirit. He's slightly
yeah.
Peter Pan-ish. Like I get a Peter Pan kind of like, you're always
He's
going to be
like-
25.
Yeah, he does actually have he's almost, yeah, there's like a stoicism about him.
Yeah.
but like a freeness in his playing that's like just, it's like it is actually perfect. That's the crazy part, is like it never occurs to you that there's anything wrong with anything that he's doing. You know, you don't jump to judgment very quickly. You just accept that this is what this person is giving you, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, he has this very particular. I'm gonna move this microphone closer to you just because
Okay.
I'm looking at waveforms and doing all that craziness. But yeah, he has this very particular oldness. Like he just sounds vintage,
Yeah.
you know?
He sounds his playing is so thoughtful, but also incredibly vulnerable
Yeah.
in all of the right places.
Yeah, he's really wonderful. So he was on the record, and you got to work with James Poyser, who's also one of my favorite human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
How was that? Did you wrote with him, or did he co-produce
Well,
something?
so on the EP that came out before the album, we have a song called "The End,"
Okay.
and that we wrote together. And then he did some co-production on 359 New York.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He's another very calm human being.
Oh, I mean, and also has an incredible sense of humor. Like maybe one of the funniest dudes.
I'm not gonna say what they are, but he's texted me some gems during the shooting of the show.
Yeah, he's just kind of quick. Like he'll just come out of nowhere with it because he's such a sweet guy that, you know, all of a sudden he jumps to a humorous place and his timing is perfect. But
I feel like I've met a bunch of the people in that scene, and especially Philly in general kind of has this
Yeah.
thing where I think there's a very, you know, it's the city of brotherly love or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's also the city of brotherly preparation. And I feel like all those people from Philly, like all the musicians I met there, all just rib each other all the time.
yeah,
And so you're
maybe.
just quick. Like every one of them's quick.
Yeah, I think that's like, I mean, but Philly has got this vibe about it that is very like quick and playful and smart, but like really down to earth.
Yeah.
Like everything, all of the art that poetry and music and otherwise that I know out of Philly has that kind of energy that is like the city and the people.
Yeah, very much so. Well, and music feels like, I mean, that was always the place that in New York when, I've mentioned this on these podcasts before, but like when the Philly Cats would sit in.
Yeah.
That was the one group of people who I was like kind of intimidated by.
Vibes for days.
Oh man. And
Yeah.
you still see it when you go there. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
see, like,
The authenticity is like, I think there's a bridge between like what the culture in Philly is and how that translates to the people and the artists.
yeah.
But that's all cities.
Yeah. I got really one of my first people I got introduced to when I moved to New York was Corey Bernhard. So I've been following his career as a
Okay.
keyboard player, and like everything he does just has this dirtiness. Like even his gospel playing is just
Oh,
super
wow.
dirty, but it's like it kind of always epitomized the Philly vibe for me of like whenever I would see him, like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
It's about to be really dark. Really yeah. So we just played last night. We're recovering today. And then you'll play New York a few days after this podcast gets released on the 27th.
Yes.
And Elliot Skinner is sitting in with you.
Yeah, he's gonna sort of pave the evening
Amazing.
with his magnificence.
I'm a new Third Story listener.
You're a new Third Story listener.
Yeah, I knew of them through our mutual friend Zach Mullings a little bit. 'cause
Yeah,
we played
yeah.
drums with him.
Zach's on the record.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, I just kind of in prep for this, I checked him out.
Oh.
So I blame you for my new Third Story obsession.
I mean, it's hard not to just feel like you fell into a dream immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful group. So give me, I'm going to start with the easy ones. We'll wait till we're less caffeinated and relaxed to get into anything that may be strewed as
Okay.
controversial. So with your record coming out, you released it independently, correct?
Yes.
Okay. give me. It seems like over the past couple of years, and I'm definitely not well versed in the business of all this, but what do you find the advantages being in having just your hand be in charge of that? Or I guess maybe I should ask, are there advantages to that?
I think that's relative
Yeah.
because, like, I think that depends on what you find advantageous, you know? Like, if your goal, you know, for instance, is to, you know, play stadium concerts, then having that kind of team and legwork as far as like a community of people working for your record, then yeah, there are advantages to that. And then on the flip side would be, you know, not having that, where, you know, independence might not seem advantageous, but that's not necessarily my goal. So the advantages of being independent are being able to guide my audience to me in a way that can be maintained.
Sure.
You know, because once people and teams start representing different parts of you, you know, it's going to be a game of telephone where you're going to end up being the culmination of everyone's version of where it is that they think you should be, you know? And that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and it seems like it's already, and I've been fascinated doing this podcast, talking to artists, because currently, I mean, I have an EP out, but I'm not really trying to do the
Artist,
litany.
yeah.
I'm calling you an artist. And you know, I'm not trying to like book my own shows necessarily yet, because I just know, and I respect the game so much of, because it just seems like there's so many people you have to please to a certain extent. And especially like I mean, crowd wise, that's one big one. And you run into like, okay, if I'm going to do this for some sort of money, I have to at least think about that a little bit. But then the second you start diving into like management and booking agents, and I mean, like, have you run into situations where you've had any sort of in charge people telling you like, this might not be the thing to do here? Like, what have been their?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, that's not inherently a bad thing, you know. I feel like artistry and business will often clash, you know, if you're trying to make your art your business. So there will always be someone deciding what might be a better business decision as opposed to what is an arts decision. So
how often do you find they come into contact with one another?
I mean, if you're signed all the time. If you're not, and you see, once again, that's an advantage to a degree, because I decide whether, you know, I'm making a business decision or an arts decision. Like, it's totally up to me. And then I'm responsible for that decision as well. Like, I'm the only one burdening the result of that decision.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when it's someone else making it for you, there can be, like, and it goes wrong, for instance, you know, then there can be a lot of, like, unneeded resentment build up, and then it, like, translates to your art.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. I have so much respect for people that do it all by themselves, because even just...
Me too.
even just writing, I mean, I'm sure some people have their processes down to where it's like, okay, I can do this thing in X hours, and you know how long that's going to be. You can kind of like fashion your week around it. But just the whole idea of like writing and booking and doing contracts and thinking about both long-term and short-term, like...
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I actually don't necessarily think it's healthy to have to like exist under the umbrella that is what it means to be independent now. You know, which means like not only do you have to be able to do all those things, you have to be able to do all those things relatively well.
Yeah.
You know, to get to those next steps and next places that you need to be. So it's just like, you know, from the age of like entertainers who were, you know, singing / dancing / acting, you know, the independent artist is the social media manager / manager / road manager / dietitian.
Producer.
Huh?
Video producer.
Yeah, it's like that is so demanding on the soul, especially as it relates to, you know, making time for creativity if you're doing all of those things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's, like you were saying, there's so many different parts of the game, even compared to like 60s, 70s, or even 80s probably. It's like you added 6 roles onto the job description, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, and it's never ending. Like, you know, businesses are changing and shifting, and all of a sudden there's a new forum. So then there's an education gap, and then you have to ease your way into a new platform or a way of marketing after you just learned the last one. You know, and that requires, I think, a very specific kind of mind. And I feel like that's why independent artists, like truly independent artists who are thriving, are, you know, incredibly intelligent for one thing, and always open to shifting and adapting to the market, not always pushing against it, you know, or choosing the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
You know, that's the toughness of this, is just like, you know, deciding whether you want to be an artist is one thing, and deciding whether you want your art to be your business is a complete other thing.
That brings me to a strange question, and I only ask this because I know a few people who've run into this, but
Okay.
back in, and I'll mention a very specific one. I'm not going to say his name, but there was an artist back in Omaha who was like one of my favorite songwriters ever. Like incredible voice, incredible product, just looked the whole thing. And he got signed. I could be getting the story wrong, but I want to say that he had gotten an offer from like Merge or some, you know, like relatively big indie label. That's a lovely car. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not good enough at editing to get that out, so I'm just going to kind of talk in rhythm with it so we can hide it. Anyway, so this guy, you know, they had been touring like locally and regionally for a while.
Yeah.
And we're getting offered like big tours out in the West Coast and stuff like that. And he literally, I don't know if I want to call it a freak out, but he literally just was like, you know what? I don't really like doing this for money anymore.
Yeah.
And so he, for at least for a while, for 2 or 3 years, was like, fuck it. I'm going to go just play music to my friends at house parties. I'm going to move to the country of like some state I've never been to before. And he just gave it up. And he plays a little bit now. But you know, I think he's on like an indie label or something with a different project. But the thing had so much momentum and so much money behind it. And he was getting to the point to where people were coming to the shows and saying like, play this song, play your hit, mama. And I remember thinking that it was so noble that he was like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this for you. And so my question that I wanted to pose at the beginning of my rant was, do you ever have the inner argument of is this for me or is this for my pocketbook? I know it's probably a weird question to ask someone who just put out a record, but
yes. Is this for me, or is this the decision itself?
Maybe. I mean, maybe just who is it for or what is it for is a better question.
I think, once again, if you make your art your business, then on some level, you are hoping to make money.
Sure.
And so, that said, you know, everybody's got to eat. And there are times where I feel like you have to make those kinds of decisions to get to the next step. Like I think it's noble to maybe never make money decisions, but then you've sort of made a decision about business.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like it's a constant balancing act. Like moral money decisions and like ethics, that's different. Like those kinds of decisions are avoidable in my opinion. But if it's just like money or art, I think if you make your art your business, you have to balance both.
That is very real. What do you? So you haven't really ever done like guitar player side guy gigs, right? I mean, you play guitar really well, but you haven't really gone down that road, right?
No,
You definitely do it well enough to get side guy gigs.
I
Trust me.
appreciate that. Maybe the biggest compliment.
Yeah.
No, I haven't really gone down that road, mostly for, confidence reasons.
Sure. So I guess my question would be, because I find that a lot of the, and actually my last guest, I had Rachel Eckroth on.
Yeah.
We were talking with her about how, she has the artist thing, but yet she also will do just keyboard gigs. And that's kind of her, she had mentioned like, oh, this is one of the main ways that I fund my artist thing.
Right.
Do you try and keep music in the money path underneath what you're doing as an artist? Or are you, because I mean, what's your vibe regarding that? Like, do you have things that you like to do as kind of like your passive earners?
Yeah, well, I am someone who is only recently what I would consider like a full-time musician, as far as like that's where my income comes from.
Okay.
Solely.
And you're doing a lot of like writing and production kind of stuff, right? Okay.
But, I worked 6 years at a perfumery because I didn't want my money decisions to be my art decisions.
That is one of the most noble things ever. I've mentioned that to a number of people, not specifically about you doing that, but when I was in New York, I felt like there were a lot of singers who would do a lot of singing things that altered who they were.
Right.
And I think there's been a few people who've taken the route that you're taking, and I feel like their music is always a bit purer because there's no like tainting of it by anything else. It's like I'm doing music when I'm doing music, and it's honest. Everything that comes from it is me, and then the part that funds that has nothing to do with that.
I mean, yeah, and then for me, there was this whole part of it that's like, as a writer, if you're not living life in some kind of like relative, normal way, then you're like missing life all the time, If you're not interacting with people, like real life people who aren't in the industry, because that's a whole world,
Yeah.
Being around musicians, that's a whole universe, and it's like any art, you can kind of get high off your own supply, where you're always talking about like artist things, and we all beget each other. So it's just like, as a writer, doing music all the time is not writing.
Sure.
Like, it's more the observation or the scribing of the outside world. Not a great word, outside, but
that's apt though. I mean, it feels like that.
Yeah, it's
100%.
It's a little bit of a glass.
Yeah.
Effect, like looking out.
I think too, as again, if you're making your art your business, a part of you has to be a salesman. And if you're going to be a salesman, you have to understand who you're selling to. And this is something you see, I think, a lot with jazzers or people who are in like any sort of intellectual music. And I'm saying that with quotey fingers for those of you who can't see me. But you run into these people who you only hear your little echo chamber of like what's good and what's not.
Right.
And you realize that, okay, those people, are usually on tour at the same time you are. So they're not going to pay to come to their show, or at least most of them aren't.
Yeah.
Like you're actually trying to please the people who usually have no idea what you're trying to do.
Yes, if that is your goal, the
Yeah.
pleasing part, you know?
Well, I mean, at a certain point, doesn't it have to be if you're selling to them? I mean,
Right. Well, here's something I learned working at a perfumery for 6 years. Marketing is knowing who you are as a client. I think when you try to tell other people who they are, you've lost the pitch. So passion sells. People who know themselves are actually the greatest salesmen because you're inviting someone into your world, not asking to be in theirs, you know?
oh wow, yeah.
And that
Way to think about it.
invitation, an invitation by nature has a more soothing exchange than the sort of like outward, like, you should come over here. And, that's why people still love the feeling of finding music and falling into art in very natural ways because the invitation and the energy is set. They just have to make their way to it. And any artist who really knows who they are like that, in my opinion, is sending out such a crazy vibration that it's no wonder that surmounts and becomes this movement. And a movement is much bigger than an audience. A movement is something that breathes and expands and grows over time in ways that like an audience might come and go.
That would be a good argument for, or a good reason to tell someone to practice living rather than practice selling.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like, there's also this factor that like when I was in my 20s, my goals were very different. I didn't know the industry as well as I do now, and there's still so much to know, but how you quote unquote sell or how you invite changes over time. Like I no longer sing louder into the mic if I want people to hear me. I talk lower because that's an invitation to listen and not to yell. There's a whole exchange that exists in like the shifting of perspective alone, just in how you think about it.
It's also a good way to make all the narcissists feel crazy. Corey does that sometimes. He turns his organ on 0.
Yeah.
Just start playing every note he knows. And everybody shuts.
Yeah.
You have like the 3 really loud alpha males in the back of the room who all of a sudden look really uncomfortable. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Silence just, it's its own
golden.
magic. It's its own sound.
That's so good. Do you run into... So I notice I'm not a huge lyrics guy, but you're one of the few people that I've played for where I pay attention to that.
Oh, really?
But I've noticed, and tell me if I'm totally interpreting things wrong, but a lot of your music seems extremely personal, like personal experiences, lots of like romantic situations or like life situations. It doesn't seem like you've touched the social end a huge deal. Unless I'm listening to the wrong things, which I could be. But the reason I bring that up,
Right.
I'm curious to see. It seems like now, I think there were probably waves of this in the 60s and 70s too. But
Yeah.
it seems like now there's a definite like social stance victory parade in music sometimes, where
Yeah.
and I'll avoid total context regarding it, but it seems like there's definitely a lot of artists who, if they can make a statement, will sell a record no matter what the statement is because it's a statement. Do you ever get shit from any sort of business people for not doing that tune-wise as much?
Well, once again, independence is really just
Because I
kind of the move with that.
I asked that even just from festivals, because
Right.
I've noticed that there's festivals that are very like, we want you because of this cause you aimed for.
Well,
Or I noticed recently I was listening to the radio for the first time in a while.
yeah,
And there was some European festival that was like 50% of our festival is women, and went down that
right.
whole route. But it just seems like, that's great. It's a great cause to have. But it seems like if you're starting your festival from like a social purpose,
Right.
it may end up in a different place than just a festival celebrating wonderful art. It might not,
Yeah.
maybe it won't, but
Yeah, I mean there's crossover with that. You
Yeah.
can also be enjoying wonderful art. I think, I guess back to the question, do I ever feel like the pressure to have a more social justice geared lyrical content?
yeah.
No, because I already believe that I do that. Like what people hear and what I say don't often meet up. So relative to how you're hearing my music or how you understand me as an artist, I believe that I believe that by standing by what I do as an artist is inherently political and has a social message, because it doesn't always take, there are plenty of artists. Everyone's got their own way of expressing activism or addressing social justice issues. And I think it's everyone's got their own style, and mine isn't maybe as obvious.
It's definitely not going to be in your face, I don't think, with you.
No, because it's just like what we're working towards, in my opinion, is accepting subtlety and multiplicity. And so if I have to shout it at you that my existence is inherently political, just by nature of living and being and thriving as a woman of color, that, and then with the added pressure to be even more direct with that, it's just like, I think individualism is political, because that's taking a stand against, the mold.
And what the world wants you to be.
And what the world wants you to be, And I think that those artists and those songs exist because there's an audience for that. There's an audience for the direct, non-subtle, non-nuanced messages. But we are, in my opinion, working towards the acceptance of multiplicity, that people, races, genders, economic backgrounds are multiple things.
Yeah.
They're not linear. There's lots of overlap and intersectionality.
Yeah.
And so lyrically, I was fortunate enough, my parents sent me to some really great schools. So my education is an act of rebellion.
Yeah, very much so.
And so the language that I choose is as direct in its craft, or my intention to craft it that way, as, saying for me, very trendy social justice phrases and things like that. And I'm not saying that that's inherently bad. It's just, it's not my method.
Sure. Well, and I wonder, even for people who that is their method, obviously they're needed. Like you need a counterbalance, and whether or not I agree with some of the things politically that are going on or not, you have to have kind of the counterbalances to each side.
Yeah. You have to have multiple options, because there's a lot of people and everyone needs to hear that message, or everyone communicates differently. So really, that's not necessarily my audience, or maybe it is. I don't know.
I almost wonder sometimes, I think there was a time where, this is going to seem really easy to say, but I think there was a time where that stuff worked well.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, you could hear Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young sang like "Four Dead in Ohio," and you're like, oh shit, that's gonna be on the front page of a paper.
Yeah.
Whereas, or Joni or anybody going off about political stuff, and now it just seems like even if you win, you kind of lose. Like my favorite part of the Grammys was, I think Childish Gambino won with the "This Is America" tune, won like some sort of song of the year or something like that.
Right.
But it was like that song winning an award like that just seemed really like, I almost wonder like, man, does he want that? Like
that's
it's like a song about ignoring what's going on in America wins an award that makes people ignore what goes on in America.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems like an interesting, like, even the wins might be losses sometimes.
Well, yeah, I'm big on the lens, because I think that for all the best intentions in the world, sometimes it just doesn't land like that for some people, and all we can really hope for is that the people who get it ride for it, and the people that don't maybe come around to it. But art has always reflected the social conscience. And so and that song, as great as it is, might not really land for a lot of people, or even for the people who nominated it for award fully.
Sure.
Until maybe 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's very true. True. I heard a story recently about an interaction between Maya Angelou and Tupac.
Oh, wow.
I won't tell the story because I don't know it well enough. But this woman, Chloe Valdery, who I've been following online, who seems like, she's definitely probably a center right figure, but she comes at everything from this like, I love everyone, and I'm not going to criticize you because that won't do it.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how apparently Maya Angelou and Tupac were in the same room, and Tupac walks by and yells at some assistant of his or something like that, and Maya Angelou was like, "Good morning, sir," and like just comes at him in this very loving like, "Hey, how are you today?" And apparently the whole, just that one statement of like, "Oh, hello, how are you doing? I really appreciate what you're doing," just made him way nicer to everybody else in the room. And apparently for like the next day or two, like Tupac was very respectful and like, but it just seems like, and that actually brings me to another thing where I find,
oh shit,
that was the dog. I brag about you fairly often because I think you and I have had some pretty intense political conversations.
Oh, stop.
But you're one of the only people who I feel like this is I wish everyone could do this, where you can talk about a subject and you can, whatever the other person is saying, you're like, nope, that's not it. The way towards fixing that is like, well, let me tell you another side of it. And it comes from such a like respectful angle and like such a like loving thing. And I just, it encouraged me. Like you're one of the few people I've talked to, and especially in music, who can talk about something political that I totally disagree with, and I'll go, you know what though, that person pretty much always on point. Let me check it out. Wow. And like I've actually changed my mind about a couple of things.
Wow.
It's weird because I'm a stubborn asshole, but yeah. But I think that part, with what you're saying about, you have a certain message. It doesn't need to come from that particular angle just because that's not your angle. But you can just feel, especially in your music, you can feel the sense of like love. And even if the thing isn't about love, it's like, here's a loving way to say this thing that isn't about love.
Right.
And it's, we need more of that shit. I mean, it's a really cliche thing to say, but it's totally true.
Well,
so,
I mean,
congrats.
There's so many different, I found out on Valentine's Day, as I was sort of just feeling a way about the whole holiday itself, that it just like, it really only gears towards one kind of love.
Absolutely.
And there are, the Greeks believe 8 kinds of love that you can experience.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, you know, while we're all writing love songs, we're also touching on like layers and kinds of love that have like crossover in different that occupy different spaces in your life, you know? So, you know, even if I'm writing a love song, one of the songs on my album, Chapter 3, The Hatchet, is about friendship. And it's I know that, but
That's
it's
one of the heaviest. I was almost in tears on that one last
Oh.
time. Yeah.
I mean, it was a heavy song to write, so it's funny that weight is almost inevitable when I play it, especially for other people, because that's just other people also relating to that weight and that love, how relative to, you know, their lives. So I think that self-discovery is also a form of activism when we are all sort of designed to accept and or really not designed, we're programmed to think that we should all feel and react in the same ways. And yes, there's crossover and similarities, but like how we look into ourselves is really how we free ourselves. So yet another way where, you know, if you're talking about love and you're sort of navigating how to present love in this way that it makes sense for you, you're also clarifying it for another person. And that's oftentimes why like lyrics particularly mean so much to me, is because how I navigate this one phrase could be the difference in one's understanding. And not really, I don't even think that far to the other person. This could navigate me closer to myself. So
You have, and we joked about this yesterday, but one of your songs, and I looked up a description of how one of the stories about how you wrote it, but the song "Everybody Likes to Party."
Oh God, no!
I won't. No, I wanted to give you my interpretation because it made me feel a very specific kind of way, especially when I read the.
Oh, I was misquoted, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I won't quote the quote that I got, but we were joking yesterday about, you know, like the kind of tongue-in-cheekiness in the sense of it, and it made me think of, you know, going to. I'm not a big partier.
Yeah.
But in my new single life, I've been trying to go out and like, you know, be a human again. And you know, it's like you go to these parties, and especially in an LA, there's always like the two people in the room who are like the outliers.
Yeah.
You know, you'll see someone wearing like a panda hat or like shoes made of human skin. No, no, you won't see that.
We identify ourselves.
Yeah. But you know, you run into the two people who you're like, okay, I see you.
Yeah.
You know, I see what you're doing. And here, there's something in the way that you sing that song that made me. It's like I hear that sentence, and it brings me into those people's lives, and it kind of makes me feel like a weird empathy and a unity with them, because you know, even though I would like to think that I dress relatively normal and I look relatively sane, there's a part of me that sees, you know, the person with like really weird makeup in the middle of his nose or something like that, or like the woman with 8 feet heels, you know, some sort of attention grabber, and I'm like, I want that attention too. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel there's this super desire to be accepted. Either to be accepted or to have something help you start the conversation.
Right.
Both of which I massively struggle with. You know, it's like you go to these parties and you're like, okay, I want everyone here to like know me and love me. You know? But then there's also the like, okay, what do I do to get in here?
Right.
You know, and my default was always, okay, if there's a piano around, shit,
I'm getting on piano.
Yeah, like I'm playing whatever, like if there's something on the radio, I'm just going to play along with it.
Yeah.
I'm going to like bop every line I know over
Yeah.
someone will talk to me.
Wow, what a moment. You found that all in Everybody Likes to Party?
Just from that line.
I am a huge fan of implied things. I think that's where songwriting gets really interesting, when you can imply an entire scene
Absolutely.
that plays out in someone's that's actually if I've made it,
Yeah.
which it sounds like I might have from your description, to me that is making it. Like that is it.
It brought me to a really specific moment at a really specific party
Yeah.
recently.
Well, it's funny because the song, what I meant to say in that article, and you know, it doesn't always translate that way, unfortunately, is that my roommate, it was a conversation with an old friend, roommate of mine, and, you know, about this guy she was seeing, but, you know, her one hang up was that he kind of dressed like Edward Scissorhands. You know, she was like, he seems like really cool and like, you know, but there's this thing, you know? And like, clearly this guy knows who he is enough to very comfortably and overtly try to channel, you know?
Or he knows how to search.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his starter.
Yeah.
That's his conversation starter. Because it wasn't just like passively wearing something that might remind you. It was like a full-blown statement. And she was uncomfortable with it. And, you know, we may or may not have been drinking. And it just sort of dawned on me. I mean, like, everybody likes to party. You know, it's just like, it literally is the moment where you realize, like, what is the real hang up? That they're them, you know? That it bothers you. It bothers you that someone is so them, you know? Or on the other side of it, you need to have that conversation started.
Yeah.
You know, that's what makes you feel like you have something different to offer. And that's so powerful because that borders, you know, that talks about confidence and insecurity on both sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm. Well, it shows you the power of, it shows me the power of one line. It's such a like simple thing to say that apparently started from sort of a tongue-in-cheek moment.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. It made me go full like, oh shit, I remember when I was at this party at person X's house and I saw these, you know.
Yeah.
It brought me there. So.
Yeah,
congrats.
the video, the concept for the video was meant to be like a prom situation.
Okay.
It was meant to be that kind of 80s prom thing where you dress in what you think is cool. And it just ends up being a disaster, but it's just like everyone's embarrassed of themselves literally all the time, especially if you're like an introvert trying to be a social person. Like sometimes they don't add up, and it's so tough because it's not for a lack of wanting to. It's like not having the fluidity to do it in a way that isn't like jarring, you know? And so everyone has their methods. Like some people are smooth talkers. Some people wear stuff so they don't have to start the conversation. Or that, you know, that's them, but that's them saying, this is me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see that, you know, like I see pictures. So my brother lives up in New York, and he my oldest brother I think is 40. He looks much older than he is. I'll say that. Yeah, in fact, he looks, much younger than he is, and he looks younger than me, even though I think he's probably 19 years older than me, which is terrible.
Wow.
Lotion is wonderful.
Moisturizing is actually the truth.
But I think he's been up there living with his husband for 15, 16 years now.
Oh, nice.
But
Upstate?
Well, he lives in the city.
Okay.
And they have a spot in the city, and he's done very well for himself since he's been.
You see how I couldn't even fathom someone like living in the city.
Yeah, I think he has a spot on like 2nd Ave and you know, Lower East Side.
Oh, sick.
And I just remember seeing, you know, he was part of kind of the like gay 90s club scene.
Right.
And I would see these pictures of him in like entirely red leather. You know, just these amazing. I'm like, damn, Kane, you're like crushing that outfit. But, you know, you see that, and I think of moments like that, like, okay, he had just moved from Lincoln, Nebraska,
Yeah.
which is, you know, not the most welcoming place sometimes for that kind of lifestyle. And, you know, he went up to New York, and, you know, and him and I have had these chats, like, that was his conversation starter. Like, that was the
Yeah.
thing, like, nah, I'm new here, but I'm going to be loud about it. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm worth talking to, come up, you know. And now you see him, and he's just the most conservative dressed person. Like, he's wearing, you know, he dresses nicely, but
Yeah.
it's like, you know, tan pants and a sweatshirt, and like nothing. There's no flash at all. And
Right.
it just, you know, it kind of shows you that you know, people have those modes where it's like, I'm at a point in my life where like I need this volume. you
Yeah.
know. So everybody does like to party a little bit.
You know, and that's woof, that goes so deep. Everybody really does like to party, and I realize that, you know, people may hear this and then listen to the lyrics of the verses versus the chorus.
Yeah, it's like a
and
little,
to do something different.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, but there's such a, you know, the vibe between the verse and the chorus is so different,
Right.
that it almost didn't matter for me.
And
I was
and
like,
in
okay, that's
fact,
the thing.
it didn't matter for me either. You
I
know,
was like, okay, that's the thing, I can identify with that.
right.
Then there's also this thing, and that hit me way deeper. Like, let me
Yeah.
go into that one. You know,
Well,
so
it's also just like, you know,
different strokes for different folks kind of situations.
yeah,
too,
but
kind of
it's
thing.
just like, it would be, and I don't know if other songwriters feel this way, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it.
Do it. We get in trouble on this podcast, or at least we're going to try to at some point.
Yeah, when the song is written, it's written.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am often able to do a different kind of job if I am looking for a certain kind of thing in a song. You know, some songs just come out as the songs that they are, and some songs are crafted. So I have plenty of songs that are crafted, and then I have, you know, a good amount of songs that just happened, and then I listen to them later and deduce what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know? And so with Everybody Likes to Party, it was a combination of that moment and then sort of the earlier conversation that we had that is like, it is everyone at the party. It is like someone is always that person, you know? And even with the sort of like romantic narrative in this song as well, it's like, just be you, don't waste my time. You know, like we're all scared, frankly. We are all leaning against the wall waiting for someone to talk to us.
We're all at the moment where did you have couples skating when you were in grade school?
Oh my God, I didn't know what dating was or couples were.
You know, so we, I don't know why this reminded me of this shit. In Fremont, Nebraska, where I grew up, we had this skating rink, and there was this thing called the couples skate.
Oh, wow.
So we'd have these big skating events, and then one time a night you would have like the romantic 80s love song would come on and be like, okay, go find your date.
Love it.
And we're like 10. So
Right.
awkward anyway. Terrible anyway. And I just remember like the moment that you just described is pretty much what I felt every time I heard like, is this love that I'm feeling?
It's literally like when the lights dim at the ice skating rink and the strobe comes on.
Yeah.
And it's just like, all right, now it's time.
Yeah, nah, I just wanted to scream.
And I'm just like, really? Like, way to make it awkward, people. Like, just turn the song on and see if anyone goes towards each other.
We're already uncomfortable, and like some dudes have deep voices now. I don't yet. So
Listen, being alive is uncomfortable. Everyone's going through it in some way or another, and that's kind of the whole point, is that it's never just about you. It can't be. Not for anything, any kind of clarity in life.
Well, and you know what's funny too is I think grasping that makes everything so much more enjoyable. Like I look at a guy like Jake last night. Like a lot of normal people, I feel like, would probably see Jake's set and get uncomfortable because it's different. You know, it's fucking incredible.
Right.
But he's kind of a weirdo, and he does like, you know, tunes that are kind of weirdo tunes, and they're fabulous. They're
Yeah.
very well written. But I could see someone who A, wasn't comfortable with themselves, or B, wasn't in our music scene, hearing some of that stuff and being like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, that's
But-
with any innovator.
But I see that and you know, thinking about the like, oh man, everyone's trying to deal with this shit in their own way.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so I see a guy like that, and it just makes me feel I have like a life is beautiful moment.
Yeah.
I'm
You
like,
know-
damn, like this is really great. And then we see the band that played after us, who was wonderful, but you
Oh,
know,
I didn't.
they were cool. They were cool. The lead singer, I'm pretty certain he had a sock in his pants, which is fine.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but again,
Everybody likes to party. That's just literally my response to everything now.
oh my god, I'm gonna do the weirdest switch right here because we talked about lotion for a minute. In my researching you,
Okay.
I dove through all the fucking old interviews, and I won't bring them all back up. But you did say something about your love for men getting shaved in public at one point. And I...
That is a misquote.
Oh, okay, well, that's fine. I love these misquotes because
No, like-
it's going to make me honest about something, though, because reading that, actually, I have this mission with especially male musicians.
Okay.
Where everyone I meet, I try to convert into realizing how fucking amazing pedicures are.
Yes.
So male musicians, I know it's probably crazy. You probably never heard anybody say that to you before, but get a fucking pedicure. It's the greatest shit.
I mean, here's the thing. What I said contextually, it was, you're talking about the bevel.
Yeah.
So I have an affinity for men having self-care items the way that women have.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, barbers and proper shaving places are one of the few in environments, for lack of a stronger word, environments where men can go and get groomed.
Yeah.
And I actually believe that touch is important on a regular basis, whether that be with the intention of, healthy contact where someone is like detensing your body. Like this is like why, for me, massages or pedicures or anything like that is kind of important, because it's kind of this weird reminder of this like exchange and a detensing, and like men don't really have many things like that. It's
a value giver too. Like it's definitely, for me, that kind of shit. And I know this seems super apt to say, but it's I've been, as I focus more on mental health as I get older, I've been really into the like, okay, how can I value myself outside of art?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you wrap so much shit into this, either into my like night of playing and trying to convince myself that I was going, I was good.
Right.
I talked to Tim LaFave last week about validation and how like, it's just brutal sometimes getting off tour and not having people clap for you everywhere you go.
It's
a fucking ass kicker.
Yeah.
And so, and this, I know it's a weird tie over, but I feel like paying for something like a pedicure is just you telling yourself like, nah, you're fucking great. Like you can spend a couple bucks and like get and treat yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not going out drinking and getting all super screwed up. And I see value in the occasional, like having a glass of wine to chill out. But there's something about going outside the box a little bit and saying like, you know what? Nah, you're worth this too. This thing that you wouldn't normally do. And I swear those have been like therapy sessions for me.
Yeah, I think
like they're really, goddamn.
Yeah, everyone's job is important. And I'd say jobs and fields where people, are touching you and doting on you and exchanging in that kind of way is even, more intense than people realize. That's, first of all, a person, a whole person, not a job. It's not, I don't know. There's something in that that's so beautiful. And, I feel like, women are it's socially accepted to go get manicures and pedicures and do all of these self-care items publicly. Whereas like barbers are maybe one of the only places men can go publicly where their masculinity is not questioned. And so I celebrate anything that invites that sort of expression and deconstructing of, you know, who self-care is for.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
I think I think it takes you away from the norm. Like there's, you know, I didn't grow up around barbershop culture.
Yeah.
But the few that I've been to, and Tehran made me go to his when we were in Dallas, which was fabulous.
I love it.
Yeah, he did the where they have the chalk joint on your jawline.
Oh, I have
that
not.
whole get up. I'm gonna show you the picture. It's wonderful. But anyway, so I went and got it done, and again, fabulous. It was a great experience. It seems like some of that culture still, and I'm definitely not a anti-masculinity guy by any means.
Yeah.
But it seems like that culture still kind of has this thing where it's like you can go in and you know, talk about your grievances and
Right.
have a therapy session, but it's still comfortable.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's some sort of value in going outside the box and saying like, you know what, I value myself so much that I'm going to treat myself in a way that no one else will.
Right.
And that is slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and I the few people I've gotten, especially on the road, like, hey man, let's go get pedicures. Like,
Yeah.
I'll pay for it. I promise you're gonna feel crazy, but it's gonna be great. They get done. Every single person who's done it is like, holy shit.
It's such a soothing, like, it's such a soothing thing. Like, it's just such an amazing job.
Yeah.
But it's so normalized that people don't realize, like, those kinds of rituals, like anything ritualistic as it pertains to self-care, I'm here for.
Yeah.
Like, I think those kind of practices are necessary. And I feel like, you know, masculinity, like hyper-masculinity has damaged self-care for men. So my love of shaving is that there is this one thing that I wanted to acknowledge in that article, but there should be more things.
Oh, absolutely.
There should, you know, men should feel comfortable, you know, walking into anywhere that allows them to dote or take care of themselves, because that is the exchange, like the understanding that you are worth those kinds of things. You know, the value of them is, you know, ever giving. It's always giving.
It also makes the tour bus smell way better.
For practical reasons.
Men who tour, like, just save me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you get on that bus, go have someone clean all the shit off your feet. It's gonna feel great. You're gonna make your day better, my day better.
It makes lots of things more pleasant.
It really does.
I am pro things that make you more pleasant as a person to interact with.
Yeah, I have been, especially the last few tours. I've been really. We were just talking about Lush before the podcast. But
yeah.
Like, you know, and I don't go super in. I'm not doing facials and stuff like that. Even
it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, no, Tiffany, the background singer for Corey's band, I think is.
But that's also, you know, that's an LA thing.
Yeah.
As well, like the sort of things that LA allows to thrive and exist. Yeah. It's really beautiful if the intention is, you know, in line with the service. Mm-hmm. You know, like the fact that like just certain kinds of self-care are more acceptable here than they are in other, you know, places in the U.S. is very innovative, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of, you know, I think maybe in these first 4 or 5 podcasts, I've touched on the differences between LA and New York too much. So I probably won't dive super deep.
Stay away from it.
But, you know, that was a plus to living out here, and I think can apply to, you know, many different musical situations. It's like, you know, you kind of figure yourself out and you go to the place where you're educated, and you go to the place where it's going to build your business skills, your technical skills. And then you find the mental part, you know, and you find the part that's like, okay, where can I grow in that other vein?
Yeah.
And like LA for me, shit has been, you come out here and everyone's doing fucking yoga or in therapy, and I got
Yeah.
out here and I was really intimidated by it because it seems very like posh,
Yeah,
you know,
it
and
seemed
it's a part of the fake. Like you hear about the fake LA culture, but there's a reason. You know, our joke in New York was always that you would come out to LA and everyone would just ask like, "Oh, what's your favorite color, bro?" You know. But now I realize that if I ever get asked that, it's because that person is just really happy and wants to fucking know what your favorite color is.
See, perspective is everything.
Yeah, it's been a really great shift, you know. And it's, you know, I really do think that, you know, as we touched on at the beginning of this thing, like learning life and focusing on life is such a positive to writing, to performing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no, you know, I tell students of mine, like, go get beat up, man. Like, go get your heart broken. You're gonna be twice the player.
Right.
You know, I mean, I can think of some very well-known musicians right now who I just wish would get broken up with.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
the second you have a heartache, you're gonna be a special person.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of, it's really the abruptness.
Yeah.
Breakup is just like the break in sequence of this thing that became so normal that you almost don't know how normal it's become. And then all of a sudden it's not there. And then you have to readjust everything.
Yeah, there's this. I've been thinking a lot about some words that Sheree Reed was telling me about, like death and rebirth. And I think the relationship thing is part of that, but I think there's so many parts of music and learning where it's like, you know, you come up and for instance, as a teenager, like, and I'm only looking at this through the lens of like being an instrumentalist, but like you have okay, my notes are going to get me there, you know, and then you get to a point where someone who has more notes than you and is doing less is succeeding. That's a death. Like that part of you dies, you know?
Right.
And then, you know, maybe as a songwriter, you get to the point to where you're like, okay, I'm writing, you know, for this certain audience, and then you see someone who's very obviously only writing their emotion and not necessarily giving a shit about the audience, and you see them become a superstar. That's a death and rebirth. You know? And the breakup thing, I think is, it can be part of that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things in life that do that, but
Yeah.
it's like it's really important for
It's cold water, man.
It really is.
That shit is really cold.
Oh God! Speaking of cold water, my roommate's been trying to get me to do the who's it? Wim Hof. You know that shit?
No.
Oh my God! You don't know the Wim Hof stuff?
No.
I think it's like WIMH. I should really look this up while I'm talking to you. I'm an idiot. WIMHOF. He's like a Northern European spiritual advisor, maybe. But his whole thing is training like deep breaths through you know, things like cold showers, and he like over oxygenates his blood. I think part of his story was that he like learned how to heal himself through breathing.
Wow.
Yeah, and he like did it as a test, and then like taught a bunch of people to do it as a test. Anyway, that's that cold water shit reminded me of that, and I'm gonna get you hooked on Wim Hof because I feel like you're gonna be obsessed with him.
Oh, sick.
He's really fucking intense. He's this like really gnarly mountain man looking dude. Sets all these records for like, I'm gonna sit in ice water for 45 minutes.
You know, they say when you have a panic attack that you should take a cold shower.
Well, I mean, I could see how it would be distracting. That shit feels crazy.
Yeah, and I think on like even a scientific level, like the sort of jumping of your nerves depending on how your panic attacks manifest, it does just like take the air out of it. Like it takes the momentum out of the build. Man. Because you're just, you know, it's like hitting your nervous system so abruptly.
Yeah. I wish I could
break in sequence.
I wish I could have a break in sequence on planes.
Yes, planes are tough.
Planes have been killing me.
Planes are tough for anxiety because there is just nowhere to go.
Yeah. Are you this is a weird question. What's your seat preference?
Window.
You're a window person?
I'm a window person.
Since I've become an anxious mess over the past 2 or 3 years, which I'm very open about, like super mental health guy trying to be. But I found that if I'm on the aisle, I know I can run
Where?
to a bathroom.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So worst case scenario, that's the panic attack vibe is like, okay, I can at least say, fuck off, I'm gonna go be alone. But if I'm in a window, I can't crawl over 3.
See, my methods prevent me from getting to that space in the first place. I get nice and sleepy.
We'll put sleepy in italics.
Oh, well, just for the kids' sake.
Yeah. I think there's an explicit next to this on the iTunes.
Oh, cool.
I say
So
the
no
word
kids
fuck
are
a lot,
watching.
so.
So I get nice and stoned before a flight so that I am asleep before takeoff.
And you can sleep while you're high?
If I'm at the end of my high.
I gotcha.
So, like, I kind of induce a very cozy coma.
That's wonderful.
So that I am really just kind of drifting in and out of sleep the entire flight. And that's since I've become an anxious flyer because I wasn't for a while. And then all of a sudden it happened.
I wonder why that there's got to be somebody who's researched that, like why that flips. Because I've been touring pretty heavy for 4 or 5 years now. And when I first started doing it,
Right.
flying to me was the example of success. It was like, oh, the product of success.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm flying, it's because someone is paying for me
Yeah,
to
yeah,
go
yeah.
somewhere. And now I get on a plane and I'm like, don't freak out. Freak out. And I'm not scared of it. I mean, shit,
Right.
You're just looking at it mathematically, like you're fine.
Yeah.
Like I have a way higher odds of walking out into your street in LA and getting crushed by like,
Yeah, I don't even, my anxiety around planes is not triggered, I don't think. Yes, it's triggered by flying, but it's not necessarily triggered by, like, the idea that the plane is going to crash necessarily. I think it's just a trigger. I think that the altitude and I think that the air and I think that the context of planes really is what freaks me out, not necessarily that something's gonna happen,
Yeah.
Sometimes just like I have certain, foods or experiences or things that can just induce a panic attack.
You have foods that put you into it.
Yeah. I have like allergies
Oh, okay. Yeah.
that can bring on a panic attack.
I've been one of my ways of dealing with all that has been to fuck with my diet super heavily over the past couple of years.
Listen.
And my current roommates hate this. So I preface, sorry, vegetarian crew, you're gonna hate this, but I did so I was a vegetarian for I think 5 years or something.
Yeah.
And it was cool. I mean it's tough to tour. It's tough to tour in the scene I'm in and maintain that.
Yeah.
Just
on a
because-
balanced level.
Yeah, and especially if you play Europe a lot, there's a lot of places that just aren't trying to.
Yeah, it's not a thing everywhere yet, believe it or not.
We're spoiled in LA and New York because there's
Yeah.
heavy parts of that. But so anyway, I had still had some anxiety issues, and I got home from a tour, and I was like, you know what, man, I'm taking a lot of supplements. I'm like, this has been a pain in the ass. Let me try something else.
Yeah.
I went as hard right as possible. I went
Carnivore.
I went, and it wasn't even just carnivore. It was, I only ate meat for 2 months. Wow. And I'm gonna give my listeners a obvious preface, but I'm not a dietitian. I know very little about dieting apart from reading the occasional Huffington Post article. But
on superfoods?
Yeah. But that's the least anxiety I've ever had in my life.
You know what? I am a firm believer in listening to your body.
Yeah.
I don't believe that diets should be separate from the person because every diet is not for every person.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's just like every medicine isn't for every person.
Exactly. So it's just like what may work. And also, our bodies change and shift, and we need to be adjusting to those changes and those shifts.
Yeah.
Because if we're trying to like power through because we're used to doing this thing, then once again, not the path of least resistance as far as your health is concerned, because, you know, what my body and my health is now at this age wasn't, 6 months ago it was different. And so you have to adjust and feel out what your body is telling you you need. And
dog Ruby is disagreeing with all of this.
She's just like, give me the meats.
And there's, I'm definitely not an expert in any of this, but I have my moral qualms and my environmental qualms with all of it. But as far as feeling goes, man, that was the closest I felt to feeling really good. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a balance with it right now, but
that's really the key, is just like balance.
Yeah. So give me the quick rundown. We've talked about everything from pedicures to all meat diets. You're going to New York to play a show. Are you going to try and tour with this thing? Or are you going to sit back and kind of see how it's held on to by the fans? Like, what's your next move as a chess playing musician?
If we're talking about chess, my next chess move is to finish the second project. I think that I am grateful for the space to have made this record in 8 years. And that is to say that, like, there were several records that were scrapped before it got to this record and that team of people that ended up being on this record. So honestly, like, I feel like my next move is to say who I am right now at this moment.
Okay.
And what my understanding of the world is at this very second. Because I think that, like I said, it's a beautiful thing to be able to manipulate moments sonically like that. But as a songwriter, I'm constantly scribing the world that I live in. And the world that I lived in that record was my 20s. Mm-hmm. I'm now 30. Mm-hmm. And lots of things have changed. And I think that in order to stay relevant in some sense, I need to be writing now, not then, or milking then. You know what I mean? Like, I'd love to tour this record, but I also feel like touring is a full-time, commitment. And writing on the road is not as easy, all the time in every place that you're in. So that kind of prolongs the whole process of making new music if you're touring projects, sometimes for 2 years.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you know, it's been 4 years since your last record came out. Yeah. So touring is great. I just feel like I want to play a bit of catch up, mm-hmm. and let this live in the space that it has always lived in, which is just an introduction to who I am as a person.
Sure.
And this record, no record really defines an artist. It's just a Polaroid of what that moment was, and then you make new pictures and new projects.
Well, the cool thing is, if you wait about 8 months, 10 months, you're going to have a world full of lovely election news to write about.
Oh my God.
Political side of this whole thing.
You know what? And I have written political songs. They're just not the songs on that record, or maybe records that have been heard. But I think there is a craft to writing something socially conscious.
Yeah.
That isn't trite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like language, as much as like it's constantly changing and is, changing value at the same time. Some, the blunt sort of direct what's going on generally did cover a lot of surface area in a small space.
Yeah.
But there was even an art to that. Even the phrase, what's going on? Mm-hmm. There's so much going on. Like, there's even more going on than when Marvin Gaye wrote that song, that we're we're just diving into. We're not even at the dermis, you know? Yeah. We are sitting very lightly on the top, hoping we'll press down soon. Mm-hmm. And those words, that expression, that'll come to me in the way that it comes to me. But if that's not up to me.
I feel that.
I'm a scribe. Like, that is not up to me. When the moment strikes for that message to be like uniquely itself, it will be the best way that I could have said it for that moment that it came to me. You know, I don't really take responsibility in the way that other writers might for being like the masters of their craft, in a sense where I'm going to sit down and write a socially conscious song that is going to penetrate the fold and become this movement. Yeah. And I don't actually think any of those movement songs are ever created really like that. Mm-hmm. You know, like an observation of life in its essence often becomes the song that speaks for what it is to live. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's because we were so present in the moment. And particularly like as writers and craftspeople, being that present in a moment and writing it down and having the wherewithal to know to pick up the pen or to go to the piano. That's really the art of knowing when to sit down when you think of it. And like pick up the tool that's going to translate this moment into something that you can then, you know, telephone to other people and generations and, you know, literally change the fabric of the way that people think. That's not just a matter of being like, you know what, we need world peace, and I'm just going to write a song called World Peace. And yes, that does happen. So it's not...
I've been around one or two of those.
Yeah, you know, where it's just like, okay, today...
This is a song about being nice to your friends.
Yeah, and cool. But then there are songs like Chapter 3, The Hatchet, where it's just like, that was about the dynamics and, you know, you were saying death and rebirths of a friendship, a kind of love that is like quite different in nature than romantic love because it doesn't sever the same way. It's not even, it's the same limb, but it's almost stronger. Yeah. Yeah, the death of friendship is an intense thing, unlike romantic love entirely.
Yeah, well, and you know, there's definitely moments too where those two come together.
Oh, absolutely, especially if your romantic partner is your friend.
That's what I'm going through.
Yeah,
it's still like, oh, I'm losing that and that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of love to lose, yeah. And it's crazy because it feels like someone is walking around in the world with you. Mm-hmm. Or your ghost. Like they have your ghost because you're not that person anymore. And that's very clear. But they have them. And they have them captive because you can only remember who you were after a breakup. And then you have to define who you are. So it's just like that duality does raise and beg really profound questions because that is you finding you again. Mm-hmm. And that is no small feat.
Well, it's another rebirth.
Yeah, it's another rebirth. And it's by your design. Yeah. How you come out of love back into love is by your design.
Oh, Jennah, keep whatever the fuck you're doing to write this shit. Keep doing it. You hit me all in my feelings.
Oh, thank you.
Anchors and Elephants is wonderful. Everyone should pick it up. Whatever the next thing is going to be wonderful as well.
Thank you. Got to get to work.
What is your Insta hang is at Jennah Bell?
Jennah Bell Music.
At Jennah Bell
yes.
Music. JENNAH.
BELL Music.
Music.
Yes.
Everyone check it out. The record came out this past Friday. Jennah, it has been a pleasure.
Oh,
we made it. We made it like
we did it. I talked into a microphone successfully.
It was a win, and I think both microphones worked successfully, which is a plus for this podcast. We're learning, ladies and
technology.
Gentlemen. Yeah. Anyway, everyone, take care. Check out her stuff. It's killing, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
Well, thanks for having me, Nick.
Thank you, Jennah Bell, for being on the podcast. All right, everyone, take care.
Sponsored by.